Alright, so here's a short video on basic trig and how am I going to find sides. If you notice, you look at the triangle, right? This triangle only has one side that we know the value of. In that case, that one side is going to be the hypotenuse. So I'm going to label it HYP. Okay? It gives me one angle that I know, which is angle Z. So this is going to be my starting point. That means opposite is over here. That means adjacent is ZY. So XY is opposite, ZY is adjacent, ZX is the hypotenuse. You are given the measures of an acute angle Z. Find the length of the hypotenuse, okay, and the length of the hypotenuse. You are being asked to find YZ, the length of the leg adjacent, and write an equation to solve for Z. You can use the cosine ratio. Why am I going to use cosine? Well, if you go back and you remember SO, Ka, and TOA, okay, make that an A. Sine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Since I know the hypotenuse, I'm going to use one of these two ratios, and since I want to find the adjacent side, the cosine ratio is the one I'm going to find. Well, the cosine of Z, what is the cosine of Z equal to? It's equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Now, in this right here, what information do I know? Extract it from the problem and plug it in. I know the cosine of Z. I know the measure of the angle, so that's 60 degrees. That is going to be equal to, do I know the adjacent side or ZY? No, that's what I'm going to solve for. That's an unknown. And then the hypotenuse is 16. So now you've created a ratio of x over 16. That's what you've created. Now solve it. Okay, well how? Well, how do you solve proportions? Because that's what this is. The cosine of any degree is a decimal. And what you're saying is, you're saying this decimal over here, which if I use my calculator, the cosine of 60 is equal to 0.5. What you're saying is that this ratio here, 0.5, is equal to this ratio. So whatever x has to be, x divided by 16, must be equal to 0.5 as well. Well, I cross multiply, right? Just like we did when we compared our special triangles and used ratios. Right here, x times 1 is x. So then this means that the cosine of 60 times 16 is going to be equal to x. Okay, so here's how you use your calculators now. Take your calculator, you're going to make sure you clear it, and you'll see in here, you'll see these buttons that say SIN, COS, and TAN. This is simple. Hit the cosine key, you'll see cosine. You're going to push 60, close the parentheses, because if you don't, it's going to multiply 60 times 16 and take the cosine of that. You don't want it to do that. You want it to find this decimal first, and then multiply it by 16. So close the parentheses, hit 1/6, hit enter, and it tells you x is equal to 8. I'm going to further back that up and tell you, look at this. This is a 60, a 30, and a 90 triangle. The short leg is half the hypotenuse. So that backs it up. 8's the correct answer. Let's try another one. We don't get so lucky in this because it's 20 degrees. So the sine of f, or the sine of 20 degrees, well, what's the sine ratio? The sine ratio is opposite over hypotenuse. So the sine of 20 degrees is going to be equal to, well, gee, here's my hypotenuse, f is my reference angle, 3 is opposite, EF is adjacent. What does it want to know? It wants to know, you are given angle F and DE, write an equation to solve for DF. I want to find DF, which DF is the hypotenuse, so that's what I want to find. So if I want to find the hypotenuse, it is my unknown. So this might as well be x. Well, based on the opposite over adjacent, which is x, now I get to solve. Okay, well I'm going to solve by cross multiplying. Well, 3 times 1. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as the one up here. I have to cross multiply. But the good news is I can solve this in 2 quick steps and use my calculator. So I'm going to cross multiply and I get x times the sine of 20 degrees, remember that's just a decimal, is equal to 3. Well, pretend that this said x times 20 equals 3. How would you get x by itself? You divide by 20, right? It's no different. I'm going to divide both sides by the sine of 20. So, therefore, x is equal to 3 divided by the sine of 20 degrees. So what is x? Round to the nearest tenth. Well, now, here's how you get to do this. Calculator, 3 divide by the SIN key, and you'll see it's posting right up here on your screen. It's posting exactly what this is right here. You're going to push in 20, close those parentheses, and hit equal, and it's going to say 8.77, what does it say? 14132. I want to round it to the nearest tenth, so this is x is equal to 8.8. That is the value of the hypotenuse, 8.8 to the nearest tenth. That is how you use your calculator. Right? It's that simple. Go back and rewind this if you need to. So let's look at number 1, and that'll help you with the rest of them. Okay, so what do I know? I know x, I know 18, those are legs, and I know 36. Well, x is a leg. I want to find a leg. I don't know anything about the hypotenuse. So, do I use ka, or do I use toa? Which one do I use? I do not know the hypotenuse. So that eliminates those 3 ratios. This is where you got to think a little bit. You have to stop and think about what to use. So the tangent ratio is what I'm going to use. So the tangent of 36 degrees is equal to the leg opposite of 36, x, over the leg adjacent, which is 18. Now, cross multiply. Well, gee, I know that x times 1 is x, so x is equal to the tangent of 36 times 18. Now that x is by itself, which is what it is, hey, hit that tangent button, 36, close those parentheses, 1/8, hit your equal sign, and it says 13.077, and a whole bunch of numbers after that. It says right here, round it to the nearest tenth. The nearest tenth is 13.1. There's your answer right there. Okay, so you have to stop and think about how to set it up and how to solve. But you choose. You get a pick. Okay, so you think about which ratios you would use for here. I'd probably identify the hypotenuse first, and then go from there. Like in number 2. Well, my hypotenuse is right here. Okay, so if 34 is the angle they give me, then this is going to be opposite, this is going to be adjacent. That tells you which trig ratio to use right there. All right, so ask questions.